This is the podcast that must not be named. I'm your host, Melissa, along with...
And I'm Luke.
And we are here discussing chapter number 19 of Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, entitled The Hungarian Horntail. This chapter was 24 pages long, which is 3.27% of the book.
With the first task drawing near, Ron still refuses to speak to Harry, and Rhea Skeeter's article just came out. It had 4 pages on Harry's tragic past, recounting a tear-filled retelling of the night of his parents' death, having a love interest in Hermione, and completely omitting Cedric as the other Hogwarts champion. Relentless taunts follow Harry around since the article was released, and he spends most of his time in the library with Hermione, who's bothered by Victor Crumb spending time there as well, because a gaggle of girls are always following him, wanting to get an autograph. During a visit to Hogsmeade, Harry wears his invisibility cloak to avoid more barbs being thrown his way, but Mad-Eye Moody spots him in the 3 broomsticks and points him out to Hagrid, who tells Harry to meet him that night at midnight. Harry obeys and shows up in time for Hagrid to tell him to follow him under the cloak and not say anything. Harry does as he's told and follows Hagrid as he takes a stroll with Madame Maxime. Hagrid leads the two to a pen near the Forbidden Forest where dozens of men along with Charlie Weasley are wrangling dragons. Charlie tells that each of the dragons are nesting mothers and that the 4 champions will have to get past them for the first task, and to be really careful of the Hungarian Horntail. Harry, realizing the time, dashes off to get back to the common room for his meeting with Sirius. In his haste, he crashes into Karkaroff, who is following Hagrid as well, and Harry realizes that the champions, well except for Cedric, will all know about what's facing them. Harry makes it back to the common room to find Sirius's head in the fireplace. Harry tells him everything, and Sirius warns that Karkaroff had been a Death Eater who was caught by Moody. He tells of Moody being the best Auror, and there must be a reason Dumbledore brought him out of retirement this year. He tells of Bertha Jorkins last being seen in Albania, right around where Voldemort was last reported to be in hiding. As he was about to give Harry instructions on getting past the dragon, a noise from upstairs causes their meeting to be cut short. As Sirius pulls his head from the fire, Ron arrives at the stairs and he and Harry have a row about what Harry's been up to, causing Harry to throw a Potter Stinks badge hitting Ron in the forehead. Who knows, maybe Ron will have a scar now too, just like he wants.
And so it looks like we have a couple of character introductions.
Kind
sort of. Like if you really gotta want it.
Yeah, it was. I had to kind of convince myself on a couple of these. I guess we can't even confirm that we haven't met some of these people already before. I don't know.
Theoretically, we could have, but it's not a guarantee. So we just want to mention that there was a group of giggling girls.
Mentioned a few times.
Yes.
So
mostly just Victor Crumb's pack.
Right, his harem.
And then at least 30 dragon keepers. That's more of a count than a new character thing. And then 4 dragons.
Yeah, that's like the most easily confirmed characters that I think we are at least exposed to.
Beings, if you will, or creatures of some sort. Yes. Did we go anywhere new?
This is another one. It's kind of like I can't confirm, but I put the clearing in the woods ? Like maybe. Assuming that this area is kind of the first time we've been there. We've been to clearings in the woods before, but it may not have been this particular clearing in the woods, so I'll give it to you. And then do you want to go ahead and let everyone know what those, for our Magicabulary, and I think this is an accurate description here, the Magicabulary, we have the types of the 4 dragons. Do you want to go ahead and read those off for us? I sure will. So we have the Hungarian Horntail, the Common Welsh Green, the Swedish Short Snout, and Chinese Firebolt. Chinese Fireball.
Yeah, I was going to say it looks very different if it's a firebolt versus a fireball dragon.
The Chinese Firebolt, is that like the knockoff broom?
Imported, made in China. That's bad.
That is bad.
Guess what?
What?
The names of our 4 dragons ties directly into our illustration.
Oh, does it now?
It does, because guess what it is?
A box full of dragons.
A box of dragons. A box o' dragons, if you will. Much like a barrel o' monkeys, this is a box o' dragons. Quite frankly, I feel like the box is not nearly the right size, because these dragons are just popping out the top.
What you don't realize is they've already taken the lid off the box. It's a very large lid.
Yes.
But we also have a bunch of the dragon tamers, dragon keepers kind of around, and it looks like the dragons all have like collars on, and it looks like they're actually like holding ropes, which I don't think is really described in this chapter this way, but it's interesting to kind of show.
I think of them as like magical tethers because it looks almost like they've got their. I always thought it was their wands.
That's what I thought originally, but now it just kind of looks like it's just ropes. But I don't know.
It might be ropes. You are correct.
The dragons themselves look very alligator-y. At least one of them.
The one on the far left looks like an alligator, and the one kind of
on
laying
the top
down.
Right.
I was going to say the one on the very pointing his head down. The one sort of on the lip of the box, if you will.
The kind of bottom left there.
Yeah, the one on the far right looks more like a lizard.
Mm-hmm.
Now the one in the back looks like an actual thing of a dragon that I would expect a dragon to look like.
Looks most like the she-dragon from Shrek, Donkey's wife.
Or Donald, the dreadful dragon of Dundeedle.
Mm-hmm. You want to go through the whole story?
I really, really do, because it is my all-time favorite story. And I say that while on a podcast of one of my all-time favorite stories. But The Diamond D and the Dreadful Dragon is my all-time favorite story. Thank you, the Sesame Street Library.
It is very good. That was one that I forced you to read to me all the time. And you were never against it. And
I may have performed it as in school functions, as in performed it actor style. Yeah, no. The Diamond D and the Dreadful Dragon. My go-to story. If anybody wants to hear me read that, I will maybe even put that up on Patreon, to be honest. A Melissa retelling of this story, because it is, quite frankly, my favorite. All right, so Luke, go ahead and tell us, what were some of your notes and thoughts on this particular chapter?
So it seems like it's kind of a trend that we have some long chapters going here. I feel like the last several have been kind of lengthy, at least on a lot of things happening, right?
Yeah, I'm banking. When's my next chapter less than 20 pages?
Right. It's been several in a row. I mean,
yes.
16 was 24, 17 was 16. But there was a lot that happened in that chapter with the four champions.
That's true.
18 was 25. 19 is, 24. And next chapter, I think, is 26. So it's felt like a lot. But for this chapter, I thought it was really neat. And it gets to a lot of the topics that you and I have been talking about these last 2 or 3 chapters that Harry's having a tough time with. And I just liked when he was sitting there imagining what it would have been like to just be able to go and enjoy this time leading up to the task and not have to worry about this is one of the most traumatic things I could possibly imagine being forced into at this point.
Right.
And he's been through some pretty harrowing things and forced into those along the, over the years, but it's different when you're literally going to be put on kind of public display doing it, as opposed to just a true survival thing, which is everything else he's ever had to do is more just hey, show up, and survive. And that's kind of it. And he does. But when you're literally being put on display, I think it adds a whole different layer of, the peer pressure going along with it, which we see. And I don't know, what are your thoughts on him just wishing he could be sitting here in the Hog's Head, or in the Three Broomsticks, eagerly awaiting the task. Just to watch, just to spectate.
In general, it's there's just a lot of Harry being lonely, Harry being sad, Harry being left out. Something that really stood out to me was there was so many people making so many rude comments to him. This is even before part you were talking about, but even early on in the chapter, every time he walked by somebody, they were giving him trouble. So when somebody even says his name, he lashes out yeah, fine, I'm going to go do this. And it ends up being Cho.
Mm-hmm.
And she's I just was doing this, and hi. And he's ugh.
Yeah.
You can feel him deflating, because it's not like Harry to just get mad and lash out, which means it must be worse than we're even seeing, for him to be that pent up and frustrated and overwhelmed by all of this. And then for it to be, of all people, Cho Chang.
Mm-hmm.
I felt very bad for him in that moment.
Yeah, I definitely did as well, because, she's just being nice or whatever. He dropped his quill or whatever, and he just is so frustrated that he can't even like, it's just like the natural reaction at that point of, like, yeah, lay off. Like, I'm going to go have a cry about my parents. Like, it sucks for him.
And that's because that article was, quite frankly, the worst.
Oh, it's pretty terrible.
Yeah, like the worst. Like, Rita Skeeter is the worst, period. Capital letters, italics, bolded. She's horrible.
She's pretty terrible.
She's terrible because not only is she terrible in that she's just a mean, horrible, awful person, she's a mean, horrible, awful person who influences others because she has a position of authority in the press.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that makes her very dangerous.
Yeah, and when you can be that nasty on that big of a stage, yeah, that's pretty drastic and kind of detrimental to emotional health for Harry right now.
Yes.
Anything else kind of with this trip with to Hogsmeade?
Well, not so much with the trip to Hogsmeade. Two kind of thoughts. Just in general, like the whole Hermione being your friend thing. There's three big points. Number one, Harry being sad about Ron and the whole wonky feint instead of the Wronski feint. Like, it's so touchingly and poignantly depressing.
Yeah.
Because it's cute and adorable and funny and sad. He misses Ron. And he misses the idea of a Ron. Like, of somebody who just finds the same things funny that you do, who just enjoys the same things that you do. Not that Hermione isn't amazing because she is. It's just different.
It is just different, and for all of Ron's faults or wherever he falls short at times, because he's a little bit mean at times to people, but I think that kind of helps Harry cope with things at times, unfortunately. Like he kind of needs that person who's going to kind of play the harsh card for him because he's not going to do it, but he ends up being better off having someone kind of playing blocker for him a bit. And
don't get me wrong, Ron annoys me to no end in this chapter. Like, I don't even want to talk about him because Ron's being an idiot. He just is. But beyond that, like, they just need to be friends again. Just be friends.
Just get over yourselves.
Oh my God. So here's the other kind of big thought over all of this stress, right? So we have the task coming up and the article came out and everybody hates him and Ron's not his friend. And then they get the letter from Sirius. Mm-hmm. What does it say about Harry's growth from book one Harry to right now Harry, that coming up the plot to rid the common room of other people in time for Sirius's visit warrants no more than a few sentences in the book? That would have been like 2 chapters.
Oh, yeah.
In book one, right? Like, there would have been conversations and trial runs.
Scheming.
And sort of mishap and worries. And this was like...
And Malfoy would have been involved.
Like, it literally was like, oh, I need to get the room clear. Well, we'll set up some dunk bombs if we have to, if everybody's still awake. Good. Moving on.
Game plan. Yep.
Like, no. Like, they didn't... It's the danger factor. And let's be honest. There's an absolute danger factor to this. You've got sneaking around late at night. You've got the fact that everybody is like on you for who you are and what you're doing. And then you're going to have a wanted murderer's head in your fire. Mm-hmm. Like, that's a little, it could be worrisome. Book 1, Harry would have worried. Book 2, Harry would have worried. I don't know about book 3, Harry, but definitely early Harry would have worried.
But this would have been 3 book 1 chapters. That would have been the plotting and scheming and then sneaking down to Hagrid's, and it would have stopped there. And then there would have been the seeing and being exposed to the dragons, and then leaving back. But then, like, the journey back and talking to Sirius and Ron showing up, that would have been, like, the 3rd chapter. It's just, it's funny that it's just kind of like, yeah, there's a lot of dangers. We'll just make it happen. It's fine.
Danger. Sprinkle a little danger here. Sprinkle a little danger there. It's good. It's like a level 2 danger. And we really only focus on the level 3 danger in this book. So I think
you're exactly right with that kind of mentality.
Right? Like we did all the level 2 danger. We've lived through that. So we're like, it doesn't go away.
Yeah, these are 3 and up from here on out.
Right. And then maybe with each book, it just keeps moving up levels.
I think that's reasonable.
Yeah, we'll see.
But while we are at Hogsmeade, we find out that Moody's eye can see through eye cloaks, invisibility cloaks. And, that's pretty powerful.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing at the eye cloak comment.
Eye cloaks. Yeah, I didn't want to write out invisibility. I was like, eye cloaks.
And what you guys don't see is that he has like the little I and the capital C, the eye cloak, like the iPod, the iPad, the iWand. I don't know. Like, it's a whole, Apple is taking over the world in ways we don't even know. Sorry, the eye cloak. Go on.
But what are your thoughts on it being able to see through invisibility cloaks, or better known as eye cloaks from this point on?
Yeah, canon.
Canon on this show, at least.
Check. Yeah, canon for us. My head canon says it's totally called an eye cloak.
Must not be canon.
It makes me worry a little bit about my clothes.
Right.
I'm just saying. But I'm going to assume that it's not that he can see through typical clothing, but that the eye cloak is notice how that rolled right off my tongue, by the way.
It's so natural, isn't it?
I got it. Because the eye cloak is considered a deceptive article that is trained to, like dark detectors. Not that it is dark, but because it has a deceptive purpose, like the eye is programmed for things like that.
The eye is specifically calibrated for that type of concealment going on.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I can dig that. I like that. Still, pretty powerful. Like, either way, being able to see through the invisibility cloak.
Can I talk about Hermione at Hogsmeade?
Yeah, totally.
Okay. First of all, the fact that she brought something to work on with her reminds me, it's the very, like, nerd girl, like, I bring a book everywhere I go kind of thing, Rory Gilmore-esque type behavior. Like, I always have a book with me, whether it's a physical book or something downloaded on my phone. I always have a book with me. And so it was just that moment of, well, thank goodness I brought something. And it, like, nerd girls of the world unite, right? Like, this is why you always bring a book. There's always a book in your bag because you never know when you might have nothing else to do and you need to have your stuff out. And granted, she was working on her spew stuff, but that moment just hit me. And then with the spew stuff, anybody else think it's odd that Hermione is just now considering talking to the elves in the kitchen? I mean, it's November. This has been going on for two months or whatever like that. You think that would have dawned on her earlier than that hey, let's go actually talk to the house elves. Sorry, soapbox.
What does it specifically say? Do you remember?
Let's see. So she pulls out her notebook, right? Going on, and she says, maybe I should try and get some of the villagers interested in spew. Well, S-P-E-W, I'm sure. Hermione wouldn't say spew. Hermione said thoughtfully, looking around the pub. Yeah, right, said Harry. He took a swig of butterbeer under his cloak. Hermione, when are you going to give up on the spew stuff? When house elves have decent wages and working conditions, she hissed back. I'm starting to think it's time for more direct action. I wonder how you get into the school kitchens. No idea. Ask Fred and George, said Harry.
Makes me think, reading it like that she's almost looking to, like, break them out. More direct action, like forcibly free them, is what it seems like to me.
Protests.
Yeah.
Labor strikes. But she's still not talked to him.
That's true.
I do like the suggestion to go ask Fred and George, though, so that always cracks me up.
So we do get Sirius's letter, and he basically, says, hey, I'll meet you at 1 a.m, and then Hagrid's like, hey, meet me at midnight. What are your thoughts on that?
Harry Potter, the most popular person after 12 midnight.
Right.
It's like the opposite of a gremlin.
Don't feed him after midnight.
Yeah, right? Like, don't get Potter on him. Don't feed him after midnight. With Harry, it's like, don't talk to him unless it's after midnight. And that's cool.
Oh, yeah.
It's fine.
Make sure he has his eye cloak.
Time. And technically, Ron kind of falls into that, too, because he comes down and is, like, almost nice.
Yeah, that's true.
Almost nice.
Almost.
See? Harry, only after midnight. Harry after midnight. I feel like that's a really bad radio show.
Harry after midnight.
Right. He plays, like, smooth jazz or something like that. I will say one thing I liked about before, so as Harry's going to Hagrid's, before he goes, let's talk about the Creevy brothers.
Mm-hmm.
So the Creevy brothers are sitting and working at the table trying to repair the Potter Stinks badge. And then eventually doesn't work, and then it just says Potter really stinks after their work, which is really funny. And for as annoyed as Harry gets with them, they really are like decent blokes. You know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah.
I know that's a hero worship thing with him, but like here they are really trying to do something to make it a little better. Now, if it were me, I would have just made new badges entirely and passed those out. But maybe they're trying to like cure the badge, like finding a way to get rid of it so that they can, I don't know, start hexing all the other badges or something. But it was very kind, I think, of them.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's going to doubt, their commitment to kind of fixing what they view as a misrepresentation of Harry, and because that it is the hero worship thing for sure, but like they do have the best of intentions, and it can be kind of frustrating to have that big of a fan around at all times. Like the celebrity thing, like it can get pretty tiresome, but at the same time, like if you can kind of harness that and let them help you.
Hey, celebrity is as celebrity does.
I mean, that's definitely true.
I'm just saying, be kind to your followers. You never know when you might win which weekly's Best Smile Award.
Oh, that is true. But, like Harry, I feel like could harness their motivation a bit and have them help him out. Whatever it is, they're going to be down to help and be the most motivated people ever. So it's use that a bit.
But I don't think Harry is mature enough to realize that yet.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
But
he needs a gang.
Or a fan club.
Either one. They're totally in it.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
He just has to be ready to have the gang / fan club. My fan club gang. It's like the Mickey Mouse Club, only for Harry.
Mm-hmm.
So, dragons?
Yep, we eye cloak down, right? And first we have Hagrid kind of on this date, right?
Talk about awkward.
Right? Like, hey, I want you to come with me because I want to show you something. Oh, and don't mind that I'm also clearly on a date. Like, aw, come on, Hagrid. I get it, but
double dipping is not so good.
Yeah.
I've read those Twitter stories. Mm-mm.
I don't know what you're doing on Twitter, but I don't know what you're talking about.
Like when you set up multiple dates on the same night every 20-25 minutes or so. Like there's some good stories out there of men who've done that and the women who then tweet about it and then befriend all the other women and steal them from the guys. It's really funny. That's what this kind of feels like. Like he's double booking himself. That was not a good idea.
Yeah, not a good idea. But yeah, so dragons. Take it away. What are your thoughts on these dragoons?
Dragons are big and scary.
I mean, if it takes more than 30 professionally trained wizards to deal with just 4 of them, and it sounds like it takes some effort.
Okay, so let's talk about 30 dragon handlers, if you will. First of all, yay, Charlie. That's all. Of course, he had to come back because we actually finally got to meet him, so it makes sense that he would return.
Mm-hmm.
But if I have 30 dragon handlers and 4 dragons, is that 30 collectively, or is it these 7 are assigned to 7 per dragon with 2 sort of supervisory people as needed? Like, I'm going to pull you 3 off because this dragon needs a little bit. Do you know what I'm saying? Like
floaters.
Well,
or even supervisors.
Yeah, supervisors, like delegators. Like, okay, this dragon is under control, and this dragon, these 7 got it, but this dragon's a little bit more. So I'm going to pull 3 of you off of this dragon to go here. Almost like fire chiefs in fire stations, how they have to coordinate the effort of all the different fire stations working together. You need somebody whose job it is to be that coordinator. Maybe that's what the extra 2 guys are or something like that.
I mean, technically it just says at least 30 wizards. It doesn't, right. It just says, so there could be more. I think I actually put 30 plus.
Okay.
Dragon tamers or keepers, but it says 7 or 8 to each dragon.
Yeah. See, that makes sense.
Yeah. I
still think there has to be some sort of main delegator of.
Oh, sure. Someone, a project manager, at least. Exactly. But I like in the conversation that we had with Charlie, we get an update on Mrs. Weasley, right? And she seems to have been commenting on Rita Skeeter's letter, and it goes on to say, she was in floods after that Daily Prophet article about him. He still cries about his parents. Oh, bless him. I never knew.
Mrs. Weasley needs to be a little more, what's the word I'm looking for? Skeptical of the news, like not just believing it straight out, but
she needs to be a little less gullible.
She needs to check her sources.
Yes.
Fact check. Where's her fact checker?
Right.
Where's that app? I like when Hagrid was longing after the eggs, and Charlie's like, I have them counted.
Right. I love that line too.
I have them counted. And does it seem like Charlie has way more power there than some of the other dragon handlers? Or is it that he might be the only dragon handler who went to Hogwarts, seeing as how they're typically from Romania? So most of them might be like foreign to Britain wizards.
I don't know if I gotta feel like that. I don't know if we have any idea what heritage the other dragon keepers have at all. But I do get a feeling that he has a little bit of authority here a bit. And they could also just be, again, kind of through Harry's perspective. We see him doing his job, and maybe there's other people doing similar things.
Oh, I'm not saying that he's not doing the job. I'm saying he's the only one who converses with Hagrid. I'm wondering at what point, and the fact that he has the dragon eggs counted. So part of me always thought, what is he like, one of the bosses here? Or is it more like they're all kind of equals and they do their thing, but he's the only one in that group who actually went to Hogwarts. He might be the only one with some knowledge of Hagrid. You know what I'm saying? Because it's possible if you've got 30 wizards there, we know there are other wizarding schools. We know that the dragon camp, retreat, whatever it's called, safe zone, what are those called? Reservation, the dragon reservation.
Okay,
if you know, there's a better word for it. I just can't think of it. The dragon zone is in Romania.
Welcome to the dragon zone. You've made it to the dragon zone. That sounds like another late time radio show, doesn't it?
Oh, I was thinking it sounds like Double Dragon, like from Nintendo. I went video game style, but yes. But yeah, like if it's in a foreign location, most of those wizards probably are not British wizards.
There's a good chance at that. I think that's what I'm saying. Yeah, I think that's fair.
I mean, it makes me feel a little better about it because I've always been annoyed. Like, how come Charlie gets to be the one who talks to Hagrid? How come Charlie? But because he might be the only one there, or one of the few there who had attended Hogwarts, who knew Hagrid, who went to school there. It might be like his home turf, so he's the point person for conversations.
That, I think, is reasonable. I'm not really disagreeing with you. I'm more just, it could also just be like Charlie didn't graduate all that long ago and maybe was more familiar with Hagrid than, because a lot of students aren't familiar. He's around, but we have a skewed view of who Hagrid is related to the students because of who Harry is, right? So maybe Charlie had a relationship with Hagrid while he was at school. He just, in passing, knows him better than other students that were there might as well. But I think it could also come down to Charlie only graduated 4 years ago, and this is his first time back at the school, so he could have that, first time back excitement more than other people who may be older than he would, if that makes sense.
All of those things, either my idea or your idea, solved my problem, which was always, it was very convenient that we had met Charlie earlier in this book, and it just so happens that he's the one telling us about the dragons. Why isn't it some other worker dragon person? Like, why does it have to be Charlie Weasley? Oh, because we already know that character. Like, it just felt too convenient.
Sure.
But these are the thoughts that I come up with, my backstory for why it would be Charlie having these conversations, rather than just, it's a character we already know.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's just easier because we like Charlie.
Right.
And so
we do like Charlie, but he felt
and we can get some exposition on Mrs. Weasley that we weren't going to be able to get without it being like, oh, and Ron got a letter, but didn't tell. Like, no, right now that's the only connection to the at-home Weasleys that we could really have.
Right. I'm just saying, I felt like it was too exposition-y. It was too convenient and too writer's tool. And I haven't felt like there was that blatant use of, ooh, I need somebody here to do this. I know, let's make Hagrid say something dumb like we did in first book.
Yeah.
It had it had inklings of that, having Charlie be the one there. And so by coming up with a viable reason why, not just that he's there, it makes complete sense that he's at Hogwarts. It just never made sense to me that he was the one addressing Hagrid out of all of the other grown adults. But I'm okay with it.
I think that's fair.
Okay. What else you got?
I don't have anything until basically we get up to, Karkaroff in the woods. Basically both Maxime and Karkaroff know about the dragons, it seems. That's Harry ran into him. Luckily was able to keep the eye cloak on, and Karkaroff went along with his business thinking he had run into a small animal. I just thought that was kind of a silly, but think if you ran into something or something ran into you, you couldn't see it. What else?
Right.
Humans do things like that where you just kind of explain away the unexplainable in your own head and you just keep living. So.
Right. And meanwhile, it's much, much worse than you probably realized.
Right. So then we have the Sirius conversation. So what are your thoughts there?
Well, I don't have much thoughts about the Sirius stuff because it was really nice for Harry to have a release. It says Sirius just let Harry talk himself quiet. Basically, he just kept talking until he wasn't talking anymore.
Right.
He had let Harry talk himself into silence without interruption, which I like because I think that's what Harry needed more than anything else is that
just get it all out.
Parent figure to just listen, that he could trust to just hear it. And he did. And that was fantastic. So I'm really glad that happened.
Yeah. It says
Anything
that
else?
Sirius is looking healthier, so that's I always like seeing that. That's good. He's not as gaunt as he was, or, so it definitely is, recovering from his, from basically book 3, where it was a pretty stressful year, for him, I'd say. And,
plus 12 years of being in prison before that. So probably also not healthy, very healthy.
So that's good. I'm happy. I'm glad he's recovering well. We also get information that Karkaroff was a former Death Eater.
Yeah, that's sketchy. I mean, it's probably true, but I feel like there could be some sort of serious slant to it.
Okay.
I just feel like it's too easy of an answer for Sirius to be like, hey, this guy is the bad guy. Yeah, but Dumbledore let him there, so
right, without Dumbledore and Moody. But I think kind of Moody being there is what confirms it in Sirius's head.
That's true.
It's kind of he knew that Karkaroff was going to be there, so he put extra measures in place.
Which is reasonable. I mean, it's not, based on all the information Sirius has, it's a pretty good hypothesis.
Mm-hmm.
So, except that Karkaroff seemed really, really angry. I mean, Harry was right. He better be a really good actor because he seemed really angry that I got in.
Right. Yep.
So, we'll see.
So they get cut short in their conversation, right? When Ron.
What if Ron had seen Sirius in the fire?
I mean, better him than anybody else.
I know,
besides Hermione, but she knew. So
right, and so I understand having him hide. But if Ron had seen him, would it have been that big of a deal?
No, that wouldn't have been that big of a deal. I think Ron maybe would have gotten perspective on hey, there's some serious stuff. Sorry. There's some important stuff going on, and Harry wouldn't be risking this if there weren't bigger things at play.
Right. Maybe.
I don't know. He's very confused about Harry right now in general. I don't think he would. So I don't know. I don't know what Ron's thinking right now, but overall, I don't think Ron would have ratted Sirius out or anything like that.
I don't either. I mean, at least Sirius would have been safe. Right. I just think it's odd that Ron came down at all. And he's like, I was wondering why do you care? Why do you need to come find him? It just, I want to know what Ron's motivation was to even come down the stairs.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, they're not in good terms right now, but I mean, I like to think that their relationship means more than just this disagreement or whatever. And I think he was just generally a little bit concerned about, like, hey, I guess I'll just go check real quick in the common room and see if he's here. If not, like, I don't know, maybe I should let someone know that he's missing. Like, not to get him in trouble or anything, but, like, we know he's been in dangerous situations before, and it's not like he can walk up to Hermione's room right now with 5 girls in that room, like, or 3 girls that we know of in that room, and, like, that'd be the conversation he can't really have right now, so, and of course, Neville, Dean, and Seamus, they're not going to know a darn thing.
No.
So, this is kind of like the least he can do.
Okay, I'll give you second least. The least would be to lay there and do nothing. So
the do nothing option is always an option.
That's right. So this is the most he can do with the least amount of effort that's actually putting in effort.
Yeah.
Okay. And anything else for you?
Yeah, so obviously Harry's a little upset that Ron came down right when he did, conveniently right when Sirius was about to tell him how to get past the dragon. And the inner monologue, says that he hated everything about Ron, right down to the several inches of bare ankle showing beneath his pajama trousers. And I don't know, I personally feel like that's a bit of a low blow, because it's kind of a knock on the Weasleys in general, because I think the way it's described is, I think you're supposed to infer a little bit that the Weasleys are poor and they can't really afford these things. And that's something that, like, later on, no matter how this relationship turns out, I think if Harry reflected on that, he would regret even having that thought. Yes.
I think that's the kind of response I expect a teenager to have, or even a kid.
And I'm not saying that he's wrong. That's something I think he would very much regret even having that feeling.
Yes. So I'm glad he doesn't say anything about that. Although what he does say kind of cracks me up.
Go for it.
In that he threw, what did it say?
Just thought you'd come nosing around, did you? Harry shouted. He knew that Ron had no idea what he'd walked in on. Knew he hadn't done it on purpose, but he didn't care. At this moment, he hated everything about Ron, right down to the several inches of bare ankle showing beneath his pajama trousers. Sorry about that. Should have realized you didn't want to be disturbed. I'll let you get on with practicing for your next interview in peace.
It's the next part that I love even more. And it's, Harry seized one of the Potter Really Stinks badges off the table and chucked it as hard as he could across the room. It hit Ron on the forehead and bounced off. There you go, Harry said. Something for you to wear on Tuesday. You might even have a scar now if you're lucky. That's what you want, isn't it? That moment of, like, all of this pent up, you're so jealous of me and how dumb are you for being jealous of me, rolled up into that one comment of, you might even have a scar now. That's what you want, right? Like, you want to be famous and you want to have the scar and you want to be the person they all notice. So here you go, helping you out.
Right.
It's just such a real moment.
And then Ron doesn't come up to bed. Even Harry, because Harry was, it says, fuming and basically didn't fall asleep for a while, so would know that Ron doesn't seem like he came up to bed that night. So, I don't know, maybe something sinks in, like maybe like hearing those words, maybe, because Harry didn't realize why Ron was so upset, but Hermione kind of let him know, right?
Yes.
And so maybe Ron doesn't realize it either. He hasn't quite put it into words why he's so upset, that in the way that Hermione was able to boil it down so effectively. So saying this out loud potentially is something that, like, kind of hits too close to home for Ron for him to ignore.
He literally needed the bonk on the head to sort of get some thinking about it going, maybe some perspective. And that'll take us right up into your 5 burning questions.
Woohoo! Question 1. Could the stress and emotional distress that Harry is under be blocking him from actually learning the summoning charms? It says he's struggling with this. So I'm wondering if there's, like, something with this high amount of stress. Could there actually be something preventing him magically?
Absolutely. And I'm so glad you're asking this question, because I cannot remember, like, like the actual researchy part of this, but I was trying to look it up and then I gave it up because I thought I would sound too teachery. But there is, like, this is actually something that we study as teachers, and it's called trauma-informed practices. And it's that idea of you have to have your basic needs met, like food, shelter, clothing, before you can worry about anything else. And then once you have that met, then you need to have your self and safety met. So like the different parts of your brain take care of all of those different things. So you've got your brain stem, and I'm using my arm because that's the visual we teach kids. The brain stem is literally like, is my body functioning? Do I have food to process my body? Do I have shelter to protect my body? Am I healthy? Am I whatever? Then you've got this part here, which is the back of your brain, which name I don't remember. And this is the part of your brain that controls sort of your emotional responses. And so this is like, am I safe? Am I taken care of? Like those kinds of emotional needs. It's the frontal lobe up here. That's where the learning occurs. Mm-hmm. That's where you can learn new things and process new information, and your literally reasoning and rational thought happens. But this doesn't work until all of these other parts are met. Right now, like Harry has the food and shelter and clothing part. What he doesn't have is this emotional stability piece. So he really is missing that. He can't learn anything new right now. His brain literally won't let him because he has not had these needs met. So yes, there's actual brain science and educational research that says, no, he absolutely should not be learning this right now because there's too much trauma in his life that he is not able to move past in order to get to that frontal lobe learning.
Yeah, that sounds like a very hands-on physiological yes. response to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is the psychological, basically very, very similar kind of topic where you have to have your basic needs, physiological and safety taken care of before you can take care of your psychological needs, which is belongingness, love, esteem, and then it builds on from there. If you can have all four of those things in order taken care of, you can actually start achieving self-actualization or self-fulfillment needs, which is like actual like elite learning type things that you can do, but you have to have all of those other things at least in check enough to not be a distraction. So,
and the fact that there's research that proves that your brain even functions that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it makes sense, again, taking it as a physiological and historical long-term perspective with evolution. It's kind of the building up of multi-layered organisms. It all functionally makes a lot of sense to my engineering brain. So I very much appreciate that.
How did Harry ever learn anything, given the state of how he was raised?
And that's actually a really good topic. And I know we've kind of touched on that a little bit, but like he grew up in an abusive household, and I think some of the things he took away from that are almost kind of short circuits on ignoring some of those things. He doesn't work quite the same as everybody else because of the trauma and everything. He's grown up and has been forced to kind of hotwire some of those needs just to survive. His survival mechanisms are a little bit different, which I think end up creating kind of this hero mentality that he seems to have sometimes.
And not to get too far into this, but that's absolutely the thing you see with kids who have that kind of trauma in their lives. They either go the Harry route of like, I'm going to persevere against all odds, or like the far other end of like not being able to function. You know what I mean? Like it's one or the other, all based on that determination piece, which Harry has in spades. So we can move on.
Yeah. Question 2. Good conversation though. Question number 2. Will Madame Maxime spill the beans of the task to Fleur?
That's even funny that you're asking. Of course she will. Of course she will. I'm surprised Fleur didn't even come with her. Yes, she will. I would.
Good.
I realize that's a fault and I probably shouldn't admit that. But yeah, I would. Let's help my student. And I'm competitive. I'm in. Absolutely. She would tell.
Question 3. Will Hagrid end up with a dragon egg again?
Good Lord, please no. I mean, it's possible because they're like just sitting right there. Just eggs sitting right there. Granted, they're guarded by real live dragons and 30 dragon handler people. But like it's just right there. And it's so cute and cuddly. Please don't let him get another dragon.
It'll be a 3-chapter thing this time instead of a single chapter. That's what's going to go in reverse.
Oh God!
to bring a topic from earlier this chapter. So, question 4: could Karkaroff have helped take Bertha Jorkins? So they kind of talk about how Bertha Jorkins was taken, or whatever, disappeared in Albania, and thinking back to chapter 1, the kind of prologue chapter that we had, we know that Wormtail killed Bertha Jorkins.
True.
Could, looking at geographical things here, I don't think Bulgaria and Albania are incredibly far away when in the grand scheme of England to either of those countries. So, what are your thoughts on Karkaroff being back in league with Voldemort and kind of aiding along with this?
I think it's possible. I have never thought of it that way before, because I just always took it at face value that Wormtail just did it. But it's Wormtail, so the likelihood of his ability to perform anything on his own is very low.
Right, and I know we've kind of questioned that a bit. And I mean, if you're going to be the headmaster of a school, I would say you've got to be fairly talented, at least in some regards.
Yes.
You should be savvy in something.
It would definitely be something that could have reached out to for assistance if need be, given location and proximity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's looks like it's 200, like basically 300 miles from capital to capital. So it could be even shorter than that.
Jeez, that's like nothing.
Yeah, no, they're not very far.
Yeah. Okay.
Question 5. What was this simple spell that would help with the dragon? I mean, simple makes me think like, first couple years of school at Hogwarts.
Well, it's not a stunning spell. It's the blue fire that Hermione did in book 1 because it distracts the dragon because it thinks it's pretty. Okay.
And just like confused because...
And then it wanders off and it's like, ooh, blue fire. Ooh.
Don't follow the lights.
Don't look at the light. I can't help it.
It's so beautiful. I was going more The Marshes of the Dead, Don't Follow the Lights with Smeagol, but I do appreciate the Bug's Life reference as well.
Yes, just in general. Don't look at the lights.
Yeah. So my guess would be Wingardium Leviosa. Just lift the dragon up and get it out of the way of whatever you're supposed to do. Just float the thing away from whatever you're trying to do. Just move it.
You are dead set on making that a very practical spell.
Yeah, it needs to. It needs to have more.
What's the point of learning it?
Right. It's a fundamental thing. I underutilized. Or maybe it's the full body bind. Just do there it is. Full body bind on the dragon.
Could you do like the jelly legs on it?
Or Tarantallegra, the tickling hex? Come on, that'd be funny.
Okay, yeah, that would be really funny.
All right, I like our answers here.
Let's try those.
I did not have those ideas planned before I asked the question.
This is why we work together. All right, Luke, let's get into some chapter superlatives. What was your favorite line?
You referenced it earlier, and I'm glad you did, because it is awesome. There you go, Harry said. Something for you to wear on Tuesday. You might even have a scar now, if you're lucky. That's what you want, isn't it?
Good, solid burn.
And, yeah, I don't know. Like, it's kind of what they both needed. Harry had to vent. He spoke himself hoarse a little bit, with Sirius, which was good. But he also had to let some of this frustration out to, like, kind of show Ron that to show him that it's not cool, like, what he's doing, Like, it needs to be kind of shown to Ron that, hey, this is not just frustrating for you. Like, I'm not asking for this, and I'm upset by it. Sorry you don't realize that.
And I think Harry, in general, when it comes to emotions, is very non-confrontational. We notice that a lot with how he responds to adults, sort of
sit and listen approach that he has pretty often.
Yes, and so I think that's how he was dealing with a lot of that in book 2. He didn't really respond to any of the verbal attacks from the other students. It's how it's kind of going in this chapter. I mean, he kind of lashed out at Cho, but that was after multiple people. He had ignored them. And yet this is one of those situations that's his best friend who's done this to him. And even though the non-confrontational route is easier for Harry, sometimes those uncomfortable conversations can be the catalyst for change that you need.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And while I don't think Harry had the most thoughtful, uncomfortable conversation, I do think it was very good for him to make his feelings known to Ron in that, like, I'm allowed to be upset with you because of the way you're treating me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I think, the point that Harry got across.
I agree with you. What was your favorite line this chapter?
There was much less laughter and a lot more hanging around the library when Hermione was your best friend.
Yeah.
And for all the things we've talked about, like, it's just not the same without Ron. Not that Hermione isn't amazing, because she is, but it's not as much fun.
Yes. And there's enough serious going on. Again, there's enough pressing things going on that a little lighthearted nature around goes a long way. And sometimes it's a little bit forced with Hermione. Like, she's like the kind of friend that tells a joke and you can tell she's kind of been like planning that joke. You know what I mean? And that's nothing against her. It's just not her strength. And that's fine. It is Ron's to cut that tension at times. And
I think in general, they do better when they're a trio.
Oh, yeah. Every single time they've been, for some reason, separated, they are the Gestalt theory. They are way more than the sum of the parts when the three of them are together.
And I think Harry feels it, actually feels it more when it's Ron missing, because we've never had Ron missing before. We've had Hermione missing before. Mm-hmm. And like, it was like this unease, but not so blatantly a piece of me is missing. And I think Harry has a piece of me is missing.
Ron's a bit of the heart of the group, and there's a more of emotional response to that as opposed to missing Hermione, who's the logical side of the group. So it's more of okay, we have this problem, how do we get through it and figure it out? It's not so much emotionally devastating. It's just the skill sets that they all bring, and Harry's the natural driver and catalyst for everything. So
that's right. All right, so who was your chapter MVP?
Sirius Black. I thought he did a great job at being the godfather role, as you very, very well put. You know, he gave Harry a chance to talk himself out of being able to talk, and he just let him vent, and like, good on him. That's really all he had to do. He had to just be some ears and actually care about Harry. And we've had a few of those in the past couple chapters, but kind of from a slight distance, or it's Hermione who has plenty of other things going on and trying to help him in a more direct way, as opposed to, and she already knows. So like, talking to her, it wouldn't feel the same if he was just sitting there venting. To him, it would feel like complaining.
Right. If
he was saying the same things to Hermione. But when it's to Sirius, he's informing him, and Sirius lets him do it. And just, sometimes you just gotta listen. And Sirius did.
So, my honorable mention is tricky. I, too, really think that Sirius is head and shoulders the top of this particular chapter. But I don't know if I want to give him the honorable mention also, because there were some other people who did some things. Mm-hmm. I think, in general, Hermione just stepping up and being the good friend, library dweller though she is. I think it's important to acknowledge her commitment to Harry's friendship.
Yeah, especially when he doesn't treat her all that well in his frustration, and she understands, and she doesn't judge him for that.
Right. I think Charlie was very fun, and I like to honor Weasleys whenever they pop up, so that's fun. But I think I'm going to give my honorable mention to Hagrid for, even though it was done in a very odd way, giving Harry a heads up about the first task. I think if it weren't for that, whatever this first task would have been, Harry would have been woefully unprepared for. And while we don't know how to get past a dragon, at least we know it is a dragon. And I think that was really important, or at least it will be really important. So props to Hagrid for passing along exposition in an actual, real life, understandable, helpful way. And that's it for chapter number 19. Feel free to find us in a variety of places, including our website at thepodcastthat.com, where you can find this show and all of our shows, including the podcast that drinks and knows things and the podcast that floats down here. You can send us an email at notnamedpodcast@gmail.com, or you can find us on Twitter at notnamedpodcast.
Subscribe, like, and rate our podcast on iTunes. We would truly appreciate it. We would also appreciate it if you go over to YouTube and search for us there and subscribe to us there, because we may or may not have some exciting things coming up and planned for the YouTube channel. So go right now onto YouTube, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you can get all of the updates as they come up here very, very soon. Listen to this Not Named podcast on Radio Public. It is free, it is easy to use, and it does help listeners like you find and support shows like ours. When you listen to our show on Radio Public's Android or iOS app, everyone benefits, and I'm not kidding. They definitely support us by you choosing to listen to our show with their app.
I hope you are waiting on the edge of your seat, because next week we will be discussing chapter number 19. No, because next week we'll be discussing, even better, chapter number 20.
We're not going to talk about chapter 19 again, but we will tell you about the first task. Stay imaginary.
Thanks.